American Literature Supplement, Lesson 6, Mary Rowlandson. Mary Rowlandson lived in Massachusetts with her husband, a Congregational minister, and their children. In 1676, the Indians attacked their small settlement. 6 years later, Mary Rowlandson wrote her autobiographical account, which became one of the most popular books in America at that time. Other Indian captives narrated were written by other authors, but this one is considered by many to be the best of the genre. Assignment A. After you finish your reading, discuss the following with your parent or teacher. No written answer is required. Number 1. The full title of this work is The Sovereignty and Goodness of God, together with the faithfulness of his promises displayed, being a narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mrs. Mary Rowlandson. Notice the two words she uses to describe God, sovereign and good. Even after enduring extreme difficult circumstances, as you read, look for how the author supports her view of God. Number 2, missionaries in many countries face the possibility of being taken captive by a hostile group. How would you react in this situation? How would this be different or similar to Mrs. Rowlandson's? And here I may take occasion to mention one principal ground of my setting forth these lines. Even as the psalmist says, to declare the works of the Lord and his wonderful power in carrying us along, preserving us in the wilderness, while under the enemy's hand, and returning us in safety again, and his goodness in bringing to my hand so many comfortable and suitable scriptures in my distress. Mary Rowlandson. The narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mrs. Mary Rowlandson. The sovereignty and goodness of God, together with the faithfulness of his promises displayed, being a narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mrs. Mary Rowlandson, commended by her to all that desire to know the Lord's doings to and dealings with her, especially to her dear children and relations. The second edition, corrected and amended. Written by her own hand for her private use, and now made public at the earnest desire of some friends, and for the benefit of the afflicted. Deuteronomy 32:39. See now that I, even I am he. There is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. On the 10th of February, 1675, came the Indians with great number upon Lancaster. Their first coming was about sunrise. Hearing the noise of some guns, we looked out. Several houses were burning, the smoke ascending to heaven. There were 5 people taken in one house, the father, the mother, and a sucking child. They knocked on the head. The other 2 they took and carried away alive. There were 2 others, who being out of their garrison, upon some occasion, were set upon. One was knocked on the head, and the other escaped. Another there was who, running along, was shot and wounded, and fell down. He begged of them his life, promising them money, as they told me, but they would not hearken to him, but knocked him in the head, and stripped him naked, and split open his bowels. Another, seeing many of the Indians about his barn, ventured and went out, but they quickly shot down. There were 3 others belonging to the same garrison who were killed. The Indians, getting up upon the roof of the barn, had advantage to shoot down upon them over the fortification. Thus these murderous wretches went on, burning and destroying before them. At length they came and beset on our house, and quickly it was the dolefullest day that ever my eyes saw. The house stood upon the edge of a hill. Some of the Indians got behind the hill, others into the barn, others behind anything that could shelter them, from all which places they shot against the house, so that the bullets seemed to fly like hail, and quickly they wounded one man among us, then another, and then a third. About 2 hours, according to my observation, in that amazing time they had been about the house before they prevailed to fire it, which they did with flax and hemp, which they brought out of the barn, and there being no defense about the house, only 2 flankers at opposite corners, and one of them not finished, they fired it once, and one ventured out and quenched it, but they quickly fired it again, and that took. Now is the dreadful hour come that I have often heard of in time of war, as it was the case of others, but now my eyes see it. Some in our house were fighting for their lives, others were wallowing in their blood. The house was on fire over our heads, and the bloody heathen ready to knock us on the head. If we stirred out now, might we hear mothers and children crying out for themselves and one another, Lord, what shall we do? And then I took my children, and one of my sisters, hers, to go forth and leave the house. But as soon as we came to the door and appeared, the Indians shot so thick that the bullets rattled against the house, as if one had taken a handful of stones and threw them, so that we were fain to get back. We had 6 stout dogs belonging to our garrison, but none of them would stir. Though another time, if any Indian had come to the door, they were ready to fly upon him and tear him down. The Lord hereby would make us the most acknowledge his hand, and to see that our help is always in him. But out we must go, the fire increasing, and coming along behind us, roaring, and the Indians gaping before us with their guns, spears, and hatchets to devour us. No sooner were we out of the house, but my brother-in-law, being before wounded in defending the house, in or near the throat, fell down dead, whereat the Indians scornfully shouted and hallooed. They were presently upon him, stripping off his clothes, and bullets flying thick. One went through my side, and the same, as would seem, through the bowels and hand of my dear child in my arms. One of my elder sister's children, named William, had then his leg broken, which the Indians perceiving, they knocked him on the head. Thus were we butchered by our merciless heathen, standing amazed, with the blood running down to our heels. My eldest sister, being yet in the house, and seeing the woeful sights, the infidels hauling mothers one way and children another, some wallowing in their blood, and her elder son telling her that her son William was dead. Myself was wounded, she said, and Lord, let me die with them. Which was no sooner said, but she was struck with a bullet and fell down dead over the threshold. I hope she's reaping the fruit of her good labors, being faithful to the service of God in her place. In her younger years she lay under much trouble upon spiritual accounts, till it pleased God to make that precious scripture take hold of her heart. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, 2 Corinthians 12:9. More than 20 years after, I have heard her tell how sweet and comfortable that place was to her. But to return, the Indians laid hold of us, pulling me one way and the children another, and they said, Come, go along with us. I told them they would kill me. They answered, if I were willing to go along with them, they would not hurt me. Oh, the doleful sight that now was behold at this house! Come, behold the works of the Lord. What desolations he has made in the earth! Of 37 people who were in this one house, none escaped either present death or a bitter captivity, save only one, who might say, as he, and I only am escaped alone to tell the news. Job 1:15. There were 12 killed, some shot, some stabbed with the spears, some knocked down with the hatchets. When we are in prosperity, oh, the little that we think of such dreadful sights, and to see our dear friends and relations lie bleeding out their heart blood upon the ground. There was one who was chopped into the head with a hatchet, and stripped naked, and yet was crawling up and down. It is a solemn sight to see so many Christians lying in their blood, some here, some there, like a company of sheep torn by wolves. All of them stripped naked by the company of hellhounds, roaring, singing, ranting, and insulting, as if they would have torn our very hearts out. Yet the Lord, by his almighty power, preserved a number of us from death, for there were 24 of us taken alive and carried captive. I had often before this said, that if the Indians should come, I should choose rather to be killed by them than taken alive. But when it came to the trial, my mind changed. Their glittering weapons so daunted my spirit that I chose rather to go along with those, as I may say, ravenous beasts, than that moment to end my days, and that I may the better declare what happened to me during that grievous captivity, I shall particularly speak of the several removes we had up and down the wilderness. The first remove. Now away we must go with the barbarous creatures, with our bodies wounded and bleeding, and our hearts no less than our bodies. About a mile we went that night, up upon a hill, within sight of the town, where they intended to lodge. It was hard by a vacant house, deserted by the English before, for fear of the Indians. I asked them whether I might not lodge in the house that night, to which they answered, What will you love, English men still? This was the dolefullest night that ever my eyes saw. Oh, the soaring, singing, and dancing and yelling of those black creatures in the night, which made the place a lively resemblance of hell. And as miserable was the waste that was of their horses, cattle, sheep, swine, calves, lambs, roasting pigs, and fowl, which they had plundered in the town, some roasting, some lying and burning, some boiling to feed our merciless enemies, who were joyful enough, though we were disconsolate. To add to the dolefulness of the former day and the dismalness of the present night, my thoughts ran upon my lost and sad bereaved condition. All was gone, my husband gone, at least separated from me, he being in the bay, and to add to my grief, the Indians told me that they would kill him as he came homeward. My children gone, my relations and friends gone, our house and home, all our comforts, within door and without, all was gone except my life. And I knew not but what the next moment might go too. There remained nothing to me but one poor wounded babe, and it seemed at present worse than death that it was in such a pitiful condition. Bespeaking compassion, I had no refreshing for it, nor suitable things to revive it. Little do many think what is the savageness and brutishness of the barbarous enemy, ay, even those that seem to profess more than others among them when the English have fallen into their hands. Those 7 that were killed at Lancaster the summer before upon a Sabbath day, and the one that was afterward killed upon a week day, were slain and mangled in a barbarous manner by One-Eyed John and Marlborough's praying Indians, which Captain Moseley brought to Boston, as the Indians told me. The second remove. But now, the next morning, I must turn my back upon the town and travel with them into the vast desolate wilderness, I knew not whither. It is not my tongue or pen can express the sorrows of my heart and bitterness of my spirit that I had at this departure. But God was with me in wonderful manner, carrying me along and bearing up my spirit, that it did not quite fail. One of the Indians carried my poor wounded babe upon a horse. It went moaning all along, I shall die, I shall die. I went on foot after it with sorrow that cannot be expressed. At length I took it off the horse and carried it in my arms till my strength failed. I fell down with it, and then they set me upon a horse with my wounded child in my lap. And there being no furniture upon the horse's back, as we were going down a steep hill, we both fell over the horse's head, at which they, like inhumane creatures, laughed, and rejoiced to see it. Though I thought we should there have ended our days, as overcome with so many difficulties. But the Lord renewed my strength still, and carried me along, and I might see more of his power. Yea, so much that I could never have thought of had I not experienced it. After this it was quickly began to snow, and then when night came on they stopped, and now down I sit in the snow, by a little fire and a few boughs behind me, with my sick child in my lap, and calling much for water, being now, through the wound, fallen into a violent fever, my own wound also growing so stiff that I could scarce sit down or rise up. Yet so it must be that I must sit all this cold winter night upon the cold snowy ground, with my sick child in my arms, looking that very hour would be the last of its life, and having no Christian friend near me, either to comfort or help me. Oh, I may see the wonderful power of God, that my spirit did not utterly sink under my affliction. Still the Lord upheld me with his gracious and merciful spirit, and we were both alive to see the morning the next morning. The third remove. The morning being come, they prepared to go on their way. One of the Indians got up upon a horse. They set me up behind him, with my poor sick babe in my lap. A very wearisome and tedious day I had of it, what with my own wound, and my child being so exceedingly sick, and in a lamentable condition with her wound. It may be easily judged what a poor feeble condition we were in, there being not the least crumb of refreshing that came with either of our mouths from Wednesday night till Saturday night, except for a little cold water. This day in the afternoon, about an hour by sun, we came to the place where they intended, an Indian town called Winnamesset, northward of Quabaug, which we were to come. Oh, the number of pagans, how merciless enemies, that there came about me, that I may say as David, I had fainted, unless I had believed. Psalm 27:13. The next day was the Sabbath. I then remembered how careless I had been of God's holy time, how many Sabbaths I had lost and misspent, and how heavily I had walked in God's sight, which lay so close upon my spirit that it was easy for me to see how righteous it was with God to cut off the thread of my life and cast me out of his presence forever. Yet the Lord still showed mercy to me. He upheld me, and as he wounded me with one hand, he also healed me with another. This day there came to me one Robert Pepper, a man belonging to Roxbury, who was taken in Captain Beer's fight, and had been now a considerable time with the Indians, and up with them almost as far as Albany to see King Philip, as he told me, and was now very lately come into these parts. Hearing, I say, that I was in the Indian town, he obtained leave to come and see me. He told me he himself was wounded in the leg at Captain Beer's fight, and was not able some time to go. But as they carried him, and as he took oaken leaves and laid to his wound, and through the blessing of God he was able to travel again. Then I took oak leaves and laid to my side, and with the blessing of God it cured me also. Yet before the cure was wrought, I may say, as is the Psalm 38:5-6, my wounds stink and are corrupt. I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long. I sat much alone with my poor wounded child in my lap, which moaned day and night, having nothing to revive the body or cheer the spirit of her. But instead of that, sometime one Indian would come and tell me 1 hour that your master will knock your child in the head, and then a second, and then a third, your master will quickly knock your child in the head. This was the comfort I had from them. Miserable comforters are ye all, as he said. Thus 9 days I sat upon my knees with my babe in my lap, till my flesh was raw again, my child being even ready to depart this sorrowful world. They bade me carry it out to another wigwam. I suppose because they would not be troubled with such spectacles, whither I went with a very heavy heart, and down I sat with the picture of death in my lap. About 2 hours in the night, my sweet babe, like a lamb, departed this life on February 18th of 1675, it being about 6 years and 5 months old. It was 9 days from the first wounding, in this miserable condition, without any refreshing of nature or other, except a little cold water. I cannot but take notice how, at another time, I could not bear to be in the room where any dead person was. But now the case is changed. I must and could lie down by my dead babe side by side all the night after. I have thought since the wonderful goodness of God to me in preserving me in the use of my reason and senses in that distressed time, that I did not use wicked and violent means to end my own miserable life. In the morning, when they understood that my child was dead, they sent for me home to my master's wigwam. By my master, in this writing must be understood Quinnapin, who was a Sagamore and married King Philip's wife's sister. Not that he first took me, but I was sold to him by another Narragansett Indian, who took me when first I came out of the garrison. I went to take up my dead child in my arms to carry it with me, but they bid me let it alone. There was no resisting, but go I must and leave. When I had been at my master's wigwam, I took the first opportunity I could get to go look after my dead child. When I came, I asked them what they had done with it, and they told me it was up the hill. Then they went and showed me where it was, where I saw the ground newly digged, and there they told me they had buried it. There I left the child in the wilderness, and must commit it, and myself also, in this wilderness condition, to Him who is above all. God having taken away this dear child, I went to see my daughter Mary, who was at this same Indian town, at a wigwam not very far off. Though we had little liberty or opportunity to see one another, she was about 10 years old, and taken from the door at first by a praying Indian, and afterwards sold for a gun. When I came in sight, she would fall a weeping, at which they were provoked, and would not let me come near her, but bade me be gone, which was a heart-cutting word to me. I had one dead child, another in the wilderness, I knew not where. The third they would not let me come near. Me, as he said, have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not. And ye will take Benjamin also? All of these things were against me. I could not sit still in this condition, but kept walking from one place to another. As I was going along, my heart was even overwhelmed with the thoughts of my condition, and that I should have children and a nation which I knew not ruled over them. Whereupon I earnestly entreated the Lord that he would consider my low estate, and show me a token for good, and if it were his blessed will, some sign of hope and some relief. And indeed quickly the Lord answered, in some measure, my poor prayers, for as I was going up and down mourning and lamenting my condition, my son came to me and asked me how I did. I had not seen him before, since the destruction of the town, and I knew not where he was, till I was informed by himself that he was among a smaller parcel of Indians, whose place was about 6 miles off. With tears in his eyes he asked me whether my sister Sarah was dead, and told me that he had seen his sister Mary, and prayed me that I would not be troubled in reference to himself. The occasion of his coming to see me at this first was this. There was, as I said, about 6 miles from us a small plantation of Indians, where he, it seemed, had been during his captivity. And at this time there was some forces of the Indians gathered out of our company, some also from them, among whom was my son's master, to go to assault and burn Medfield. In this time of the absence of his master, his dame brought him to see me. I took this to be some gracious answer to my earnest and unfeigned desire. The next day, viz., to this, the Indians returned from Medfield. All the company, for those that belonged to the other small company, came through the town that now we were at. But before they came to us, oh, the outrageous roaring and whooping that there was! They began their din of about a mile before they came to us. By their noise and whooping they signified how many they had destroyed, which at that time 23. Those that were with us at home were gathered together as soon as they heard the whooping, and every time that the other went over their number, these at home gave a shout. At the very earth rung again, and thus they continued, till those that had been upon the expedition were come up to this Sagamore's wigwam, and then, oh, the hideous, insulting, triumphing that there was over the Englishmen scalps that had been taken, as their manner is, and brought with them. I cannot but take notice of the wonderful mercy of God to me in those afflictions, in sending me a Bible. One of the Indians that came from Medfield fight had brought some plunder, came to me and asked me if I would have a Bible. He had got one in his basket, and I was glad of it, and asked him whether he thought the Indians would let me read. He answered yes. So I took the Bible, and in the melancholy time it came into my mind to read first the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, which I did, and when I read it, my dark heart wrought on this matter, that there was no mercy for me, that the blessings were gone, the curses came in their room, and that I had lost my opportunity. But the Lord helped me still to go on reading till I came to chapter 30. The 7 first verses, where I found there was mercy promised again, if we would return to him by repentance. And though we were scattered from one end of the earth to the other, yet the Lord would gather us together, and to turn all those curses upon our enemies. I do not desire to live to forget this scripture, and what comfort it was to me. Now the Indians began to talk of removing from this place, some one way and some another. There were now, besides myself, 9 English captives in this place, all of them children except one woman. I got an opportunity to go and take my leave of them, they being to go one way, and I another. I asked them whether they were earnest with God for deliverance. They told me they did as they were able, and it was some comfort to me that the Lord stirred up children to look to him. The woman, viz., Goodwife Jocelyn, told me she should never see me again, and that she would find in her heart to run away. I wished her not to run away by any means, for we were near 30 miles from any English town, and she very big with child, and had but 1 week to reckon, and another child in her arms, 2 years old, and bad rivers were to go over. We were feeble with our poor, coarse entertainment. I had my Bible with me. I pulled it out and asked her whether she would read. We opened the Bible and light on Psalm 27, in which psalm we especially took notice of that verse, "Wait on the Lord, be of good cheer, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord." The 4th remove. And now I must part with my little company I had. Here I parted from my daughter Mary, whom I never saw again till I saw her in Dorchester returned from captivity, and from 4 little cousins and neighbors, some of which I never saw afterward. The Lord only knows the end of them. Amongst them also was the poor woman before mentioned, who came to a sad end, as some of the company told me in my travel, she having much grief upon her spirit about her miserable condition. Being so near her time, she would be often asking the Indians to let her go home. They not willing to that, and vexed with her opportunity, gathered a great company together about her, and stripped her naked, and set her in the midst of them, and then sung and danced about her in hellish manner, as long as they pleased, and knocked her on the head. When they had done that, they made a fire, and put them both in it, and told the other children that were with them that if they attempted to go home, they would serve them in the like manner. The children said she did not shed one tear, but prayed all the while. But to return to my own journey, we traveled about half a day, a little more, and came to a desolate place in the wilderness, where there were no wigwams or inhabitants. Before we came about the middle of the afternoon to this place, cold and wet, snowy, hungry, and weary. No refreshing for man, but the cold ground to sit on, and our poor Indian cheer. Heart-aching thoughts here I had about my poor children, who were scattered up and down among the wild beasts of forest. My head was light and dizzy, either through hunger, or hard lodging, or trouble, or all together. My knees feeble, my body raw, by sitting double night and day. I cannot express to man the affliction that lay upon my spirit, but the Lord helped me at that time to express it to himself. I opened my Bible to read, and the Lord brought that precious scripture to me. Thus saith the Lord, refrain thy voice from weeping, and thy eyes from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded, and they shall come again from the land of the enemy. Jeremiah 31:16. This was a sweet cordial to me. When I read, I was ready to faint. Many and many a time I have sat down and wept sweetly over this scripture. At this place we continued for 4 days. The fifth remove. The occasion, as I thought, of their moving at this time was the English army. It was being near and following them, for they went as if they had gone for their lives for some considerable way, and then they made a stop. They chose some of the stoutest men, and sent them back to hold the English army in place whilst the rest escaped. And then, like Jehu, they marched on furiously, with their old and with their young. They carried their old decrepit mothers. Some carried one, and some another. 4 of them carried a great Indian upon a bier. But going through the thick wood with him, they were hindered, and could make no haste. Whereupon they took him upon their backs, and carried him, one at a time, till they came to Banquay River. Upon a Friday, a little after noon, we came to this river. When all the company was come up, and were gathered together, I thought to count the number of them. But there were so many, and being somewhat in motion, it was beyond my skill. In this travel, because of my wound, I was somewhat favored in my load. I carried only my knitting work and 2 quarts of parched meal. Being very faint, I asked my mistress to give me 1 spoonful of the meal, but she would not give me a taste. They quickly fell to cutting dry trees to make rafts to carry them over the river, and soon my turn came to go over. By the advantages of some brush which they had laid upon the raft to sit upon, I did not wet my foot, which many of themselves at the other end were mid-leg deep, which cannot be acknowledged as the favor of God to my weakened body, it being a very cold time. I was not before acquainted with such kind of doings or dangers. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. Isaiah 43:2. A certain number of us got over the river that night, but it was the night after the Sabbath before all the company was got over. On the Saturday they boiled an old horse's leg, which they had got, and so we drank of the broth as soon as they thought it was ready, and when it was almost all gone, they filled it up again. The first week of my being among them I hardly ate anything. The second week I found my stomach grow very faint, for want of something, and yet it was very hard to get down their filthy trash. But the third week, though I could think how formerly my stomach would have turned against this or that, I could starve and die before I could eat such things, yet there was sweet and savory to my taste. I was at this time knitting a pair of white cotton stockings for my mistress, and had not yet wrought upon a Sabbath day. when the Sabbath came to bade me go to work, I told them it was a Sabbath day, and desired them to let me rest, and told them I would do as much more tomorrow, to which they answered to me would break my face. And here I cannot but take notice of the strange providence of God in preserving the heathen. They were many hundreds, old, young, some sick, some lame, some had papooses on their backs. The greatest number at this time with us were squaws, and they traveled with all they had, baggage, and yet they got over this river aforesaid, and on Monday they set their wigwams on fire and went away. On that very day came the English army after them to this river, and saw the smoke of their wigwams, and yet this river put a stop to them. God did not give them courage or activity to go over after us. We were not ready for so great a mercy as victory and deliverance. If we had been, God would have found out a way for the English to have passed this river, as well as for the Indians with their squaws and children and all their luggage. Oh, that my people had hearkened to me, and Israel had walked in my ways! I should soon have subdued their enemies and turned my hand against their adversaries. Psalm 81, 13, and 14. The sixth remove. On Monday, as I said, they set their wigwams on fire and went away. It was a cold morning, and before us there was a great brook with ice on it. Some waded through it, up to their knees and higher, but others went till they came upon a beaver dam, and I amongst them, where through the good providence of God I did not wet my foot. I went along that day mourning and lamenting, leaving farther my own country, and traveling into a vast howling wilderness, and I understood something of Lot's wife's temptation when she looked back. We came that day to a great swamp, by the side of which we took up our lodging that night. When I came to the brow of the hill that looked toward the swamp, I thought we had come to a great Indian town, though there were none but our own company. The Indians were as thick as the trees. It seemed as there had been 1,000 hatchets going at once. If one looked before one there was nothing but Indians, and behind one nothing but Indians, and so on either hand, I myself in the midst, and no Christian soul near me. And yet how hath the Lord preserved me in safety! Oh, the experience that I have had of the goodness of God to me and mine. The seventh remove. After a restless, hungry night there, we had a wearisome time of it the next day. The swamp by which we lay was, as it were, a deep dungeon, and an exceedingly high and steep hill before it. Before I got to the top of the hill, I thought my heart and legs and all would have broken and failed me. What through faintness, soreness of body, it was a grievous day of travel to me. As we went along, I saw a place where English cattle had been. That was a comfort to me, such as it was. Quickly after that we came to the English path, which so took with me that I thought I could have freely lain down and died. That day, a little after noon, we came to Squawkig, where the Indians quickly spread themselves over the deserted English fields, gleaning what they could find. Some picked up ears of wheat that were crickled down. Others found ears of Indian corn. Some found ground nuts, and others sheaves of wheat that were frozen together in the shock, and they went to threshing them out. Myself got 2 ears of Indian corn, and whilst I did but turn my back, one of them was stolen from me. But much troubled me. There came an Indian to them at that time with a basket of horse liver. I asked him to give me a piece. What, says he, can you eat horse liver? I told him I would try, if he would give me a piece, which he did, and I laid it on the coals to roast. But before it was half ready they got half of it away from me, so that I was fain to take the rest and eat it as it was, with the bloody about my mouth. And yet a savory bit it was to me, for to the hungry soul every bitter thing is sweet. A solemn sight, methought, it was, to see fields of wheat and Indian corn forsaken and spoiled, and the remainders of them to be food for our merciless enemies. That night we had a mess of wheat for our supper. The eighth remove. On the morrow morning we must go over the river to Connecticut to meet with King Philip. 2 canoes full they had carried over. The next turn I myself was to go. But as my foot was upon the canoe to step in, there was a sudden outcry among them, and I must step back. And instead of going over the river, I must go 4 or 5 miles up the river farther northward. Some of the Indians ran one way, some another. The cause of this riot was, I thought, their espying some English scouts who were thereabout. In this travel up the river, about noon, the company made a stop and sat down, some to eat, others to rest. As I sat amongst them, musing of things past, my son Joseph unexpectedly came to me. We asked of each other's welfare, bemoaning our doleful condition and the change that had come upon us. We had husband and father and children and sisters and friends and relations and house and home, many comforts of this life. But now we must say, as Job, naked came I from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and he has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I asked him whether he would read. He told me he earnestly desired it, and I gave him my Bible. He lighted upon it the comfortable scripture, I shall not die but live, and declare the works of the Lord. The Lord hath chastened me sore, yet he hath not given me over to death. Psalm 118, 17 and 18. Look here, mother, he says. Did you read this? And here I may take occasion to mention one principal ground of my setting forth these lines. Even as the psalmist says, to declare the works of the Lord and his wonderful power in carrying us along, preserving us in the wilderness, while under the enemy's hand, and returning us in safety again, and his goodness in bringing to my hand so many comfortable, suitable scriptures in my distress. But to return, we traveled on till night, and in the morning we must go over the river to Philip's crew. When I was in the canoe, I could not but be amazed at the numerous crew of pagans that were on the bank on the other side. When I came ashore, they gathered all about me. I, sitting alone in the midst, observed they asked one another questions and laughed, rejoiced over their gains and victories. Then my heart began to fail. I fell a weeping, which was the first time to my remembrance that I had wept before them. Although I had met with so much affliction, and my heart was many times ready to break, yet could I not shed one tear in their sight, but rather had been all this while in amaze and like one astonished. But now I may say, as Psalm 137:1, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. There one of them asked me why I wept. I could hardly tell what to say. Yet I answered they would kill me. No, he said, none will hurt you. They came one of them and gave me 2 spoonfuls of meal to comfort me, and another gave me half a pint of peas, which was more worth than many bushels at another time. Then I sent to King Philip. He bade me come in and sit down, and asked me whether I would smoke it, a usual compliment nowadays against saints and sinners. But this no way suited me, for though I had formerly used tobacco, yet I had left it ever since I was first taken. It seems to be a bait the devil lays to make men lose their precious time, and I remember with shame how formerly, when I had taken 2 or 3 pipes, I was presently ready for another. Such a bewitching thing it is, when I thank God he has now given me power over it. Surely there are many who may be better employed than to lie sucking a stinking tobacco pipe. Chief Metacomet, called King Philip by the colonists, attacked New England settlements in King Philip's War of 1675. Now the Indians gathered their forces to go against Northampton. Overnight one went about yelling and hooting to give notice of the design, whereupon they fell to boiling of ground nuts and parching of corn, as many as had it, for their provision, and in the morning went away. During my abode in this place, Philip spake to me to make a shirt for his boy, which I did, for which he gave me a shilling. I offered the money to my master, but he bade me keep it, and with it I bought a piece of horseflesh. Afterwards he asked me to make a cap for his boy, for which he invited me to dinner. I went, and he gave me a pancake about as big as 2 fingers. It was made of parched wheat, beaten and fried in bear's grease, but I thought I never tasted pleasanter meat in my life. There was a squaw who spoke to me to make a shirt for her senet, for which she gave me a piece of bear. Another asked me to knit a pair of stockings, for which she gave me a quart of peas. I boiled my peas and bear together and invited my master and mistress to dinner. But the proud gossip, because I served them both in one dish, would eat nothing, except one bit that he gave her upon the point of his knife. Hearing that my son was come to this place, I went to see him, found him lying flat on the ground. I asked him how he could sleep so. He answered me that he was not asleep, but at prayer, and he lay so that they might not observe what he was doing. I pray God he may remember those things now he is returned in safety. At this place, the sun now getting higher, which with beams and heat of the sun, and the smoke of the wigwams, I thought I should have been blind. I could scarce discern one wigwam from another. There was here one Mary Thurston of Medfield, who seeing how it was with me, lent me a hat to wear. But as soon as I was gone, the squaw, who owned that Mary Thurston, came running after me and got it away again. Here was the squaw who gave me one spoon of meal. I put it in my pocket to keep it safe, notwithstanding somebody stole it, but put 5 Indian corns in the room of it, which corns were the greatest provision I had in my travel for one day. The Indians returning from Northampton brought with them some horses and sheep, and other things which they had taken. I desired them that they would carry me to Albany upon one of those horses, and sell me for powder, for so they had sometimes discoursed. I was utterly hopeless of getting home on foot, the way that I came. I could hardly bear to think of the many weary steps I had taken to come to this place. The 9th remove. But instead of going either to Albany or homeward, we must go 5 miles up the river, and then go over it. Here we abode a while. Here lived a sorry Indian, who spoke to me to make him a shirt. When I had done it, he would pay me nothing, but he living by the riverside, where I often went to fetch water, I would often be putting of him in mind, and calling for my pay. At last he told me if I would make another shirt for a papoose not yet born, he would give me a knife, which he did when I had done it. I carried the knife in, and my master asked me to give it to him, and I was not a little glad that I had anything that they would accept of, and be pleased with. When we were at this place, my master's maid came home. She had been gone 3 weeks into the Narragansett country to fetch corn, where they had stored up some in the ground. She brought home about a peck and a half of corn. This was about the time that their great captain, Nanato, was killed in the Narragansett country. My son being now about a mile from me, I asked liberty to go and see him. They bid me go, and away I went, but quickly lost myself traveling over hills and through swamps, and could not find the way to him. And I cannot but admire at the wonderful power and goodness of God to me, in that, though I was gone from home, and met with all sorts of Indians, and those I had no knowledge of, and there being no Christian soul near me, yet not one of them offered the least imaginable miscarriage to me. I turned homeward again, and met with my master. He showed me the way to my son. When I came to him, I found him not well, and withal he had a boil on his side, which much troubled him. We bemoaned one another a while, as the Lord helped us, and then I returned again. When I returned, I found myself as unsatisfied as I was before. I went up and down mourning and lamenting, and my spirit was ready to sink with the thoughts of my poor child. My son was ill. I could not but think of his mournful looks, and no Christian friend so near him to do any office of love for him, either for soul or body. My poor girl, I knew not where she was, nor whether she was sick or well, alive or dead. And I repaired under these thoughts to my Bible, my great comfort in that time, and that scripture came to my hand, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. Psalm 55:22. But I was fain to go and look after something to satisfy my hunger, and going among the wigwams, I went into one, and there found a squaw, who showed herself very kind to me, gave me a piece of bear, and I put it into my pocket, and came home. But I could not find an opportunity to broil it, for fear they would get it from me, and there it lay all the day and night in my stinking pocket. In the morning I went to the same squaw, who had a kettle of ground nuts boiling. I asked her to let me boil my piece of bear in the kettle, which she did, and gave me some ground nuts to eat with it. I cannot but think how pleasant it was to me. I have sometimes seen bear baked very handsomely among the English, and some like it, but they thought it was bear made me tremble. But now it was savory to me that one would think was enough to turn the stomach of a brute creature. One bitter cold day I could find no room to sit down before the fire. I went out, and could not tell what to do, but I went into another wigwam, where they were also sitting around the fire. But the squaw laid a skin for me, and bid me to sit down, and gave me some ground nuts, and bade me come again. told me that they would buy me if they were able, and yet these were strangers to me that I never saw before. The 10th remove. That day a small part of the company removed about 3/4 of a mile, intending further the next day. When they came to the place where they intended to lodge and had pitched their wigwams, being hungry, I went again back to the place we were before at, to get something to eat, being encouraged by the squaw's kindness, who bade me come again. When I was there, there came an Indian to look after me, who, when he had found me, kicked me all along. I went home and found venison roasting that night, but they would not give me one bite of it. Sometimes I met with favor, and sometimes with nothing but frowns. The 11th remove. The next day in the morning they took their travel, intending a day's journey up the river. I took my load on my back, and quickly we came to wade across the river, and passed over tiresome and wearisome hills. One hill was so steep that I was fain to creep up upon my knees, and to hold by the twigs and bushes to keep myself from falling backward. My head also was so light that I usually reeled as I went, but I hope all these wearisome steps that I had taken are but a forewarning to me of the heavenly rest. I know, O Lord, that thy judgments are right, and thou is faithful, hast afflicted me. Psalm 119:75. The 12th remove. It was upon a Sabbath day morning that they prepared for their travel. This morning I asked my master whether he would sell me to my husband. He answered me, Nux, which did much rejoice my spirit. My mistress, before we went, was gone to the burial of a papoose, and returning she found me sitting and reading in my Bible. She snatched it hastily out of my hand and threw it out of the doors. I ran out and snatched it up and put it into my pocket, and never let her see it afterward. Then they packed up their things to be gone, and gave me my load. I complained it was too heavy, whereupon she gave me a slap in the face and bade me go. I lifted up my heart to God, hoping the redemption was not far off, and rather because their insolency grew worse and worse. But the thoughts of my going homeward, for so we bent of course, much cheered my spirit, and made my burden seem light and almost nothing at all. But, to my amazement and great perplexity, the scale was soon turned, for when we had gone a little way, on a sudden my mistress gives out she would go no further, but turned back again, and said I must go back again with her, and she called her Sanap, and would have had him gone back also, but he would not, but she said he would go on, and come to us again in 3 days. My spirit was upon this, I confess, very impatient, and almost outrageous. I thought I could as well have died as went back. I cannot declare the trouble that I was in about it, but yet back again I must go. As soon as I had the opportunity, I took my Bible to read, and that quieting scripture came to my mind and hand, Be still and know that I am God, Psalm 46:10. It stilled my spirit for the present, but a sore time of trial I concluded I had to go through, my master being gone, who seemed to me the best friend that I had of an Indian, both in cold and hunger. Quickly so it proved. Down I sat with my heart as full as it could hold, and yet so hungry that I could not sit neither. But going out to see that I could find, and walking among the trees, I found 6 acorns and 2 chestnuts, which were some refreshment to me. Towards night I gathered some sticks for my own comfort, that I might not lie a cold, but when we came to lie down, they bade me go out and lie somewhere else. For they had company, they said, come in more than their own. I told them I could not tell where to go. They bade me go look. I told them if I went to another wigwam, they would be angry and send me home again. Then one of the company drew his sword and told me he would run me through if I did not go presently. Then was I fain to stoop to this rude fellow, and to go out in the night. I knew not whither. Mine eyes had seen the fellow afterwards walking up and down Boston under the appearance of a friend Indian, and several others of the like cut. I went to one wigwam, and they told me they had no room. I went to another, and they said the same. At last an old Indian bade me to come to him, and his squaw gave me some ground nuts. She gave me also something to lay under my head, and a good fire we had, and through the good providence of God, I had a comfortable lodging that night. In the morning another Indian bade me come at night, and he would give me 6 ground nuts, which I did. We were at this place and time about 2 miles from the Connecticut River. We went in the morning to gather ground nuts to the river, and went back again that night. I went with a good load on my back, for for they, when they went, though but a little way, would carry all their trumpery with them. I told them the skin was off my back, but I had no other comforting answer from them than this, that it would be no matter if my head were off too. The 13th remove. Instead of going toward the bay, which was what I desired, I must go with them 5 or 6 miles down the river into a mighty thicket of bush, where we abode almost a fortnight. Here one asked me to make a shirt for his papoose, for which she gave me a mess of broth, which was thickened with meal made of bark of tree, and to make it the better, she had put into it about a handful of peas and a few roasted ground nuts. I had not seen my son a pretty while, and here was an Indian of whom I made inquiry after him, and asked him when he saw him. He answered me that such a time his master roasted him, and that himself did eat a piece of him, as big as his 2 fingers, and that he was very good meat. But the Lord upheld my spirit under this discouragement, and I considered their horrible addictedness to lying, and that there is not one of them that makes the least conscience of speaking the truth. In this place, on a cold night, as I lay by the fire, I removed a stick that kept the heat from me. A squaw moved it down again, at which I looked up, and she threw a handful of ashes in my eyes. I thought I should have been quite blinded, and never seen more, but lying down, the water run out of my eyes, and carried the dirt with it, that by the morning I recovered my sight again. Yet upon this and the like occasion, I hope it is not too much to say with Job, have pity upon me, O ye my friends, for the hand of the Lord has touched me. Here I cannot but remember how many times, sitting in their wigwams and musing on these things past, I should suddenly leap up and run out, as if I had been at home, forgetting where I was and what my condition was. But when I was without, and saw nothing but wilderness and woods and a company of barbarous heathens, my mind quickly returned to me, which made me think of that spoken concerning Samson, who said, I will go out, shake myself as at other times. But he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. About this time I began to think that all my hopes of restoration would come to nothing. I thought of the English army, and hoped for their coming, and being taken by them, but that failed. I hoped to be carried to Albany, as the Indians had discoursed before, but that failed also. I thought of being sold to my husband, as my master spoke, but instead of that, my master himself was gone, and I left behind, so that my spirit was now quite ready to sink. I asked them to let me go and pick up some sticks, that I might get alone and pour out my heart unto the Lord. Then also I took my Bible to read, but I found no comfort here either, which many times I was wont to find. So easy a thing it is with God to dry up the streams of Scripture comfort from us. Yet I can say that in all my sorrows and affliction, God did not leave me to have my impatient work towards him, as if his ways were unrighteous. But I knew that he laid upon me less than I deserved. Afterward, before this doleful time ended with me, I was turning the leaves of my Bible, and the Lord brought to me some scriptures which did a little revive me, as that in Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. And also in that Psalm 37:5, commit your way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. About this time they came yelping from Hadley, where they had killed 3 Englishmen and brought one captive with them, Ziz Thomas Reed. They all gathered about the poor man, asking him many questions. I desired also to go and see him, and when I came he was crying bitterly, supposing that they would quickly kill him. Whereupon I asked one of them whether they intended to kill him, and he answered me they would not. He being a little cheered with that, I asked him about the welfare of my husband. He told me he saw him much a time in the bay, and he was well, but very melancholy. By which I certainly understood, though I suspected it before, that whatsoever the Indian told me respecting him was vanity and lies. Some of them told me he was dead, they had killed him. Some said he had married again, and the governor wished him to marry, and told him he should have his choice, and that all persuaded I was dead. So like were these barbarous creatures to him who was a liar from the beginning. As I was sitting once in the wigwam here, Philip's maid came in with the child in her arms, and asked me to give her a piece of my apron to make a flap for it. I told her I would not. When my mistress bade me give it, but still I said no, the maid told me if I would not give her a piece, she would tear a piece off it. I told her I would tear her coat then. With that my mistress rises up, take up a stick big enough to have killed me, and struck me with it. But I stepped out, and she struck the stick into the mat of the wigwam. But while she was pulling it out, I ran to the maid and gave her all my apron, and so that storm went over. Hearing that my son was come to this place, I went to see him, and told him his father was well, but melancholy. He told me he was as much grieved for his father as for himself. I wondered at his speech, for I had thought I had had enough upon my spirit in reverence to myself to make me mindless of my husband and everyone else. They being safe among their friends, he told me also that a while before his master, together with other Indians, were going to the French for powder, but by the way of Mohawks met with them and killed 4 of their company, which made the rest turn back again, for it might have been worse for him, had he been sold to the French, than it would prove to be remaining with the Indians. I went to see an English youth in this place, one John Gilbert of Springfield. I found him lying without doors upon the ground. I asked him how he did. He told me he was very sick of the flux, and eating so much blood. They had turned him out of the wigwam, and with him an Indian papoose almost dead, whose parents had been killed. It was bitter cold day without fire or clothes. The young man himself had nothing on but his shirt and waistcoat. This sight was enough to melt the heart of flint. There they lay quivering in the cold, the youth round like a dog, the papoose stretched out with his little eyes and nose and mouth full of dirt, and yet alive and groaning. I advised John to go get some fire. He told me he could not stand, but I persuaded him still, and lest he should lie there and die. And with much ado I got him to a fire, and went myself home. As soon as I got home, my master's daughter came after me to know what I had done about the Englishman. I told her I had got him to a fire in such a place. Now had I need to pray Paul's prayer, that we may be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men. 2 Thessalonians 3:2. For her satisfaction I went along with her, and brought her to him, but before I got home again, it was noised about that I was running away and getting the English youth along with me, that as soon as I came in they began to rant and domineer, asking me where I had been, and what I had been doing, and saying they would knock him on the head. I told them I had been seeing the English youth, and that I would not run away. They told me I lied, and taking up a hatchet, they came to me and said that they would knock me down if I stirred out again, and so confined me to the wigwam. Now may I say with David, I am in great strait. 2 Samuel 24:14. If I keep in, I must die with hunger, and if I go out, I would be knocked in the head. This distressed condition held that day and half the next, and then the Lord remembered me, whose mercies are great. Then came an Indian to me with a pair of stockings that were too big for him, and he would have me ravel them out and knit them fit for him. I showed myself willing, and bid him ask my mistress if I might go along with him a little way. She said yes, I might, but I was not a little refreshed with that news that I had my liberty again. When I went along with him, and he gave me some roasted ground nuts, which did again revive my feeble stomach. Being gone out of her sight, I had time and liberty again to look into my Bible, which was my guide by day and my pillow by night. Now that comfortable scripture presented itself to me for a small moment, that I have forsaken thee, but with great mercies I will gather thee. Isaiah 54:7. Thus the Lord carried me along from one time to another, and made good to me this precious promise and many others. Then my son came to see me, and I asked his master to let him stay a while with me, that I might comb his head and look after him, for he was almost overcome with lice. He told me that I had done, that he was very hungry, but I had nothing to revive him, but bid him go into the wigwam as he went along, and see if he could get anything among them, which he did, and it seemed tarried a little too long, for his master was angry with him and beat him, and then told him. Then he came running to tell me that he had a new master, that he had given him some ground nuts already. When I went along with him to his new master, who told me he loved him, and he should not want. So his master carried him away, and I never saw him afterward, till I saw him at Piscataqua in Portsmouth. That night they bade me go out of the wigwam again, and my mistress Papooses was sick, and it died that night. And there was one benefit in it, that there was more room. I went to the wigwam, and they bade me come in, and gave me a skin to lie upon, and a mess of venison and ground nuts, which was a choice dish among them. On the morrow they buried the papoose, and afterward both morning and evening they came a company to mourn and howl for her. Though I confess I could not much condole with them. Many sorrowful days I had in this place, often getting alone, like a crane or a swallow, so did I chatter. I did mourn as a dove, my eyes ail with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed, undertake for me. Isaiah 38:14. I could tell the Lord as Hezekiah, remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked before thee in truth. Now had I time to examine all my ways, my conscience did not accuse me of unrighteousness toward one or another, yet I saw how in my walk with God I had been a careless creature. As David said against thee, thee only have I sinned. And I might say with a poor publican, God be merciful unto me a sinner. On the Sabbath days I could look upon the sun, and think how people were going to the house of God, to have their souls refreshed, and then home, and their bodies also. But I was destitute of both, and might say as the poor prodigal, he would fain have filled his belly with the husks of the swine did eat, and so man gave unto him. Luke 15:16. For I must say with him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight. I remember how on the night before and after the Sabbath, when my family was about me, and relations and neighbors with us, we would pray and sing, and then refresh our bodies with good creatures of God, and then have a comfortable bed to lie down on. But instead of all this, I had only a little swill for the body, and then, like a swine, I must lay down on the ground. I cannot express to the man the sorrow that lay upon my spirit. The Lord knows it. Yet that comfortable scripture would often come to mind, for a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. The 14th remove. Now must we pack up and be gone from this thicket, bending our course toward the bay towns. I have nothing to eat by the way of this day, but a few crumbs of cake that an Indian girl gave the same day we were taken. She gave it me, and I put it in my pocket. There it lay till it was so mouldy for want of good baking, that one could not tell what it was made of. It fell all to crumbs, and grew so dry and hard that it was like a little flint, and this refreshed me many times when I was ready to faint. It was in my thoughts when I put it into my mouth that if I ever returned, I would tell the world what a blessing the Lord gave to me such mean food. As we went along, they killed a deer, with a young one in her, which gave me a piece of the fawn, and it was so young and tender that one might eat the bones as well as the flesh, and yet I thought it was very good. When night came on, we sat down. It rained, but they quickly got up a bark wigwam, where I lay dry that night. I looked out in the morning, and many of them had lain in the rain all night. I saw by their reeking, thus the Lord dealt mercifully with me many times. I fared better than many of them. In the morning they took the blood of the deer, put it into the pouch, and so boiled it. I could eat nothing of that, though they ate it sweetly, and yet they were so nice in other things, that when I fetched water, and had put the dish I dipped the water into the kettle of water which I brought, they would say they would knock me down, for they said it was sluttish trick.